Bryant, Milam, they were in court every day. And they sat at the front and they chewed on cigars.
They were playing with their little boys and laughing with their wives, and you just felt like they felt very sure that they would not be convicted.
Papa, Mose Wright, said, hey, one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna testify at the trial. Whether I live, I don't know, but I'm gonna talk.
Simeon, one of the cousins who was actually in the bed with Emmett when they took him,
he then, just like Reverend Mose, can be a witness to what happened.
Simeon went every day with Papa because he thought he would be called to testify. And they kept him back in the witness room, but you know, he could see the people. And he saw how that they had the black press and all that. They sitting over on the side at a little card table.
The legacy of slavery is everywhere in that courtroom. The courtroom is segregated, with blacks on one side, whites on the other.
Mose Wright was the bravest black man I've ever known in my life. To have testified as he did.
On August the 28th, Mose said someone came to his door knocking.
He testified that they got Emmett Till out of bed at about 2 to 2:30 a.m.
They brought him out of the house and asked someone, was that the boy?
Prosecutor asked, was that a man's voice or a lady's voice you heard in the car? Mose answers, it seemed like it was a lighter voice than a man's. We don't know if it was Carolyn Bryant in the truck. It's been assumed over time that it was Carolyn Bryant, but then there are others who have assumed that she stayed back at the store.
And when he was asked, could he identify the two men who had come to his house and taken Emmett Till away with them?
He stood up and almost stood on his tiptoes and pointed at Milam and said, there he is. And then said Mr. Bryant was with him.
it was taking a stand as if to say, you killed my nephew, but you're not gonna run me off. That took guts.
I see that some of the athletes, they were put up their fist and kneel during the Star Spangled Banner. It's because of, I think, what my father did.
His example is the example of those who are not going to be silent, those who know that there is a price to pay.
That day, my grandfather had come home from trial, and he couldn't sleep. He said he was restless, and he got up and went and slept in the cemetery.
When Mamie Till-Mobley shows up in the courtroom, the white photographers and other reporters go crazy trying to get pictures of her. She is dignified, she's wearing black, she carries herself upright.
What do you intend to do here today?
To answer any questions that the attorneys might ask me to answer.
Do you have any evidence bearing on this case?
I do know that this is my son.
She was just amazingly composed, testifying at the courthouse and saying, yes, it was his body.
To speak eloquently and to be elegantly composed to tell her truth. That was remarkable. She was black girl magic and black excellence rolled into one.
The defense, upon cross-examination, asked in a very aggressive line of questioning whether she had an insurance policy on Emmett Till. Had he ever been to a reform school? Had he ever had trouble with white people? And it was by my reading, a backhanded way of suggesting that he might have been a troublesome boy to begin with.
She knew that justice may not occur in that courtroom, but she had to do her part. And her part was to tell not just about her son truthfully, but also to face down Mississippi.
Then the call came. Emmett's body had been found.
And Mamie started crying and yelling, and we didn't know what had happened.
The grief in the house, the sadness in the house was horrible. The screaming, the disbelief.
Mamie was just devastated. It was hard to see her heart broken.
But she had to pull herself together because she had to get the mechanisms in place to bring him back to Chicago.
Now, the Tallahatchie County Sheriff, H.C. Strider, orders that Emmett's body be buried immediately before the sun sets that day. The grave is actually being dug when Mamie gets the information that they're about to bury her son in Mississippi.
First of all, why is the sheriff even making that decision? When have you heard of a sheriff deciding that the body should be buried? There's something really that they're trying to hide here. For his mom, that was an immediate red flag. She set off a domino effect.
Miss Mamie began to call everybody she knew. She called the governor, she called Mayor Daley, she called everybody she could touch, and finally got them engaged to bring the child home.
The stopping of the burial came from Illinois. Chicago Mayor Daley, who had just become a mayor, they stepped up and got that stopped.
The same train that took Emmett down, the City of New Orleans train, brought his remains back to Chicago.
The night they brought Emmett's body back from Mississippi, everybody went down to the train station.
The body came in, understand, a wooden sealed box.
Her uncle and authorities had signed an agreement that the casket would be sealed. Why would Mississippi want a sealed casket?
Emmett's mother said, well, give me a crowbar, give me whatever. What can they do to me? They've taken my son.
What could they charge me with anyway? Breaking and entering? I didn't care. The Mississippi officials were the ones with something to hide. What on earth was it? What was I about to witness?
It's powerful, and it was history changing. That one little act of, I'm gonna see my son, I'm gonna see my son's face, literally changed history as we know it.
Well, grand jury in Mississippi chose not to indict the woman whose accusation set off the lynching of a black teenager, Emmett Till, nearly 70 years ago. The jury considered evidence and testimony regarding Carolyn Bryant Denham's involvement in the kidnapping and death of Till. After more than 7 hours of testimony, the grand jury determined that there was not sufficient evidence to indict Dunham. Charges of both kidnapping and manslaughter were considered.
Responding after a grand jury decided not to indict Carolyn Bryant Dunham, the white woman at the center of his murder. Nearly 70 years ago, she said that Till whistled at her. Till was then kidnapped and brutally murdered. Earlier this month, his family unearthed an unserved arrest warrant with Bryant's name on it. They hoped it would finally lead to her arrest, but a Mississippi grand jury decided there was not sufficient evidence to indict. We asked Emmett's cousin if she thinks the family will ever get justice.
As the public sees it, justice with somebody being convicted and going to jail, at this late date, I doubt it. So we have to seek justice in other ways.
But Gordon says he didn't die in vain. Till's lynching went on to spur the modern civil rights movement. Decided not to indict the white woman at the center of the murder of Emmett Till. The decision comes nearly 70 years after the Chicago native Till was lynched by the family of Carolyn Bryant Dunham. She's the woman who accused the young black teenager of whistling at her. The grand jury decided there was not sufficient evidence to indict Bryant Dunham, even though there was an unserved arrest warrant with him.